everybody. I'm the teen librarian Alejandria at the Kenosha Public Library, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make zippered coin pouches out of recycled plastic bags. So what we end up with is something like this for our plastic that we're going to use as our fabric. As you can see, it's a bit sturdier, it's a bit stiffer. It's not really, as rippable as a plastic bag would be. And you could probably see that there's a couple layers here. So I've already got a couple of layers of plastic that I have done. The reason that I didn't let you guys make your own, this is called fused plastic. The reason why I didn't let you make your own fused plastic is because it requires some special materials, like an iron and a ventilated area, and it is time consuming, but you can find instructions for how to make it online if you're interested in making your own. So this is the piece of fabric that we're going to use. You'll also need a zipper, which will come in your box. You'll need some tape, which I will give you some tape in your box. Some thread. I've given you white thread, but I'm using this to kind of create a more contrasting with the colors I've chosen so you can see when I'm stitching. And of course, you will need a needle. Now I've got a whole pincushion of needles, but I did include a needle in your box. I would just recommend that you find a safe place to store it when you're not using it. Okay, so here's how we begin. Okay, so you just start off with your piece of fabric. The first thing you want to do is decide which side you want to be on the outside. For mine, it doesn't really make much of a difference, but for yours, it might. One side might be a little bit more bubbly, and in that case, I would recommend that you put that side on the inside. For me and my piece of fabric, it's a little more bubbly on this edge, so I think I'll make this side my inside. Okay, so the first step we want to do, now that I've identified which side I want to be on my inside, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fold it just in half so that I know where that half is. It's not paper, so you do want to kind of press down a bunch on it and maybe just do this so that you make sure you have a nice place where you can identify where that fold is. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, so I'm going to actually fold mine down approximately where that line is. I'm just going to give it a nice press down so that I can make sure that it's nice and flat. The most important thing is trying to make sure it's a pretty straight line. And you can also follow this guide. What I would actually do, which might be easier for you after you get the first fold down, is to take away your template. And you've already got that middle fold that you made. So fold it with the middle and fold it with that fold down. So you can kind of see there's that fold right there. And your fabric might be a little bit wavy. That's just the nature of this fused plastic, and it's okay. And so what I would try and do is fold it kind of approximately where that is. So that they kind of meet up. And just run your hands over it just a little bit. And there you go. Okay, so now lay yours out with your two hems kind of here, facing up. And you're going to tape your zipper. If your zipper is closed, just go ahead and do a really quick unzip of it because you're actually going to want to pull those apart. So what we're going to do, if you can imagine what your zipper would look like, you can probably imagine these flaps would be like this, and the zipper would be on the top. We're going to, when you think about that, you don't want it to be like this. because then your zipper would be on the top of your zipper would be on the inside. You actually want your zipper to, so here's my zipper. It's on the top. I'm actually going to lay it like this along. I'm going to try and get this silver part as close to the edge here. It might be a little bit longer, but don't worry about that. And this actually kind of works perfectly because here's the edge of my zipper. I'm actually going to push it a little bit closer. It doesn't need to be, you know, an exact thing. This is a part where you might need someone's help. So sometimes you want to tape both sides of your zipper down. I'm going to recommend, because it's a shorter one and we don't have to cut our zipper, we don't do that. Lay your zipper like this on your first edge. Doesn't matter which one, you can just choose one. So it's actually laying right over that hem. And as you do that, you can kind of see that the zipper is just like peeking out above it. So once you've got that kind of positioned correctly, this is where you might want to have somebody help you out. You might want to have somebody hold that zipper in place and then have somebody tape it. The reason we're taping, and sometimes when you're doing knitting, you'll actually use these things just called pin needles. The reason we're not doing that is because we don't want to poke any extra holes in our plastic. So I'm going to take my tape and try and do this very carefully because I am here by myself doing this. And just go ahead. It might slip around while you're doing this. Get it taped down as good as you can. You can see that slipping above where I want it. So I'm just going to position that back in place and tape it down. Don't be afraid to use extra tape. And then when you're doing this, just go ahead and flip it onto the other side and make sure that it looks good. Okay, so the next part we want to do is we're actually going to start sewing. We're going to use a straight stitch. So now what we're going to do, now that we've got our thread and our needle threaded, is we're going to be taking our stuff that we've already taped down and we're going to be sewing. You can sew right through the tape. That's okay. We're going to actually go ahead and pull that later. Okay. So we want to hide our knot actually on the inside. So we're going to go in from the inside, and I'm going to start actually on this zipper end. I'm going to be trying to get it as close as I can to where the zipper meets the plastic. So go ahead and push that through once you find where that is for you. As you can see, that's what it looks like. And just go ahead and carefully, and I would do this part very slowly. Because you don't want your thread to tangle. So now that you're on the other side, I would just be careful of your fingers on the other side. I would make your stitches not too wide. You don't want them to be too far apart because then it's just not going to hold it as well. So once you find your next spot to go in, go ahead and carefully, slowly pull it and make sure it's pulled nice and tight. So you have your first stitch. Okay, so you're just going to keep doing that, flipping back and forth, putting your needle through. And if you ever get to a spot where it feels like it's hard to push the needle through, and obviously this is a very small point and it hurts your fingers, you can just go ahead and where the eye of your needle is, not the pointy tip, but the eye, just like push down on the table so you can use your work surface to help you push your needle through. Okay, sorry about that. I was having some issues with my camera, so I just decided to switch to a different camera. So as you can see, I've already started my stitches. I'm trying to sew it as close as I can to the top of where the teeth are. And that's because I just want to do it that way so that as I pull, as you can imagine, if you're pulling the zipper closed and open, if it's not secured near the top where the teeth are, that means your zipper is probably going to move a lot. So that's where we want to sew it. All right, and as you're doing this, you can see that this is clumping a little bit. Just go ahead and gently pull that so that it ends up as your loops again. This is the reason why you want to try and do this as slowly as possible as you're pulling your thread through. And see, I've got a nice stitch, so I'm going to flip back to the other side. Your other end of your zipper is probably going to be just flapping and hitting you, but that's okay. And as you're doing this, just check to make sure all of your stitches are kind of pulled nice and not too tight, but enough so that there's no extra thread that's kind of hanging off of it. And just keep going back and forth, making sure you're going through both the zipper and the plastic. Okay, so I'm getting to the end here. I do want to take this pretty close to the edge here. I don't want to take it right to the edge because it may rip. And I also want to end with my needle on this side, the side that has the tape more on it, because I want to put my knot there. I am going to add a couple more stitches just to kind of secure things, because as you can imagine, when you're pulling your zipper, these might be the ends where you're pulling and pushing a little bit more. So I just want to make sure that they're nice and secure to my fabric. So I'm just going to go ahead and just add a couple more stitches. Once I get done doing my securing stitches, and everything looks nice, I don't see any obviously loose things, I'm just going to tie a knot. So I'm actually going to put these scissors right here so that maybe that piece of the zipper will stay out of my way. So for me, when I'm doing a knot, I just take my needle, make a little loop, and put the needle through the middle of the loop. And do you see where it kind of meets? I like to kind of pull on my thread so that that ends up right over where I want to make the knot. I put my finger on there and I just gently pull so that there's a knot that ends up right there. I do that a couple of times just to make sure I have a very nice secure knot. Okay, and once you get that done, boop, you can take those scissors and you can cut down that. So the reason we also don't want to leave a big tail here is we don't want it to get caught in the zipper. And this is the other one where you might want a friend or a family member to help you tape, because if you can imagine, it's going to be a little difficult to hold this as this side is wanting to pull and tape it. As I said, I'm here by myself, so we are going to do the best that we can. So go ahead and kind of visualize where your zipper is going to end up. I would kind of make it as if you were going to be closing your zipper at this point, so that you kind of know what it's going to look like when you get done sewing it. So I'm kind of looking at it like this. This is how I want my zipper to end up. I want this to line up kind of nicely, and I want these two metal ends to kind of be right next to each other. Place your tape, I know it's a little hard to see. I'm going to bend this back a little bit in hopes that that helps you see what I'm doing. This spot, you might not be able to see me do this as well. And this is the other reason why you just might want to have a friend or family member help you with taping this, because the side's going to be a little bit more difficult. So you can see I've got my tape. I do want it to be nice and secured. I don't want it to be moving around while I'm doing any of my sewing. That would make things just a lot more frustrating for myself. Okay, so I think that's pretty good and taped. Okay, so I have threaded my needle. Again, this is my length of needle and thread. It's not very long. The reason I did that is it just becomes a lot easier to catch on things as you make it longer. Okay, so we're coming back to sew our second side of our zipper. Now, this gets a little bit more difficult because I personally don't have very small hands. You want to get it, of course, as I said, close to the teeth of the zipper. Sorry, there we go. Close to your teeth of your zipper and through your plastic. So I've kind of got it pretty close to the edge of mine, which is what I want. You don't want it right next to the edge because once the plastic rips, it'll be very hard to fix that. So we're just gonna gently pull this through until that knot, it's a little hard for me to show you, but until that knot is just on the inside. So as I maybe didn't mention, you want your needle to go in from the inside because you want to hide that knot on what's going to be the inside of your coin pouch. And so it's basically the same as you were sewing previously. The only difference is that especially at the beginning, before obviously you have an open end here where the zipper is attached, you don't have as much room to work around in. So you want to be maybe especially going a little slower during this first part so that you don't create as many tangles, because you can still untangle them and everything. It's just going to get a little more frustrating, I think, for you if you have to untangle them, because I know it's more frustrating for me. So if you do something like I did and you didn't clear the rest of your thread and it's kind of attached itself, just go ahead and gently pull that out rather than trying to pull where that was catching out. And you'll notice as you get further and further away from where the zippers meet. Okay, there we go. It'll get a little easier too. So remember, as you're pushing through, you're not pushing through this other side. You just want to push through the piece of zipper and the plastic on the other side. Okay, so I've got my sewing done. I have put a couple extra stitches and I've ended with my needle on what is actually the inside. So actually what I'm going to do, take this container and I'm just gonna have this here so that it's bending back that piece. I'm just gonna make a knot like I did previously. Get that little part where all the pieces of the thread meet. Put my finger there and just gently pull that. Okay, so now that you have your zipper on there, just go ahead and zipper it closed, open it up, make sure your zipper is in working condition and make sure there's nothing obstructing your zipper. Obviously, our coin pouch is not done because if we try to do any, put any coins in here, they're just gonna fall out the sides. So we actually have to then sew up the sides. The sides will be a bit easier to sew up now that we have done the zipper. Okay, the first step, we don't wanna sew it up just right here on this side, and that's because then you'll have this stitch and you'll have this like, you know, working edge, and we don't want that. So you're actually gonna do this like, you know, gently, but we're actually going to turn it inside out. So if your zipper is not unzippered, unzipper it and do what I'm doing. Now what we're gonna do is sew up our sides. So go ahead and find where that crease that you made previously was, and just because we've been working on it, it may have not be as sharp. Go ahead and just press down on it. Go ahead and grab your tape. We're gonna sew up our sides. So this is our zipper side. What we're gonna do is we're actually gonna go ahead and bend down these extra pieces of fabric from our zipper. And I'm gonna hold this one here, and I'm gonna have that one on there. And oh, you know what I should have done first was take a piece of tape. Okay, done. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm actually going to, we want these to be somewhat secure. Go ahead and do that. I'm gonna put one more piece of tape. I don't want it to be overly tough, but I do want these pieces not to move around. We do want to sew this pretty close up to here, and that's a little hard to see, so we may take the tape off a little early once we get past the initial parts, but we'll do that together. So go ahead and thread your needle and meet me back here. Okay, so now we come to you. I've got my needle threaded. It's time to sew up the sides. So we come to the question of whether or not we should start down here or up here. It doesn't really matter at this point which side you are going to start on as your starting point. Like when we did the zipper, we wanted to make sure our knot was on the inside. We don't care about that as much because both sides are going to be on our inside of our piece. So just pick a spot, and like I said before, you want to make sure that your stitches aren't too far apart. You especially want that on this side because if you can imagine, if you put coins or things in your wallet, you don't want big gaps for things to fall out. So I'm just gonna pick a spot that's somewhat close to the edge, but isn't, if I follow this up, isn't going to not catch both sides. So like I said before, we're gonna wanna go slowly, start pretty close to the bottom, and just keep going. Just keep pulling that through. I always get really nervous when it's my first stitch through the both pieces of my zipper because I just feel like, okay, is it going to go through both of them? Am I going to sew it in a weird way where that I can't redeem myself? So once you get there, we're basically there. Just, you know, go for it. Okay, yeah. So if your tape comes loose, just hold it in place till at least you get your needle through. And I'm gonna need a little help with my work surface getting that needle through there. Okay, I got it through both pieces of plastic and through both sides of the zipper. I'm going to use my work surface to help me tap that down so that my needle pops through. Gonna make sure my stitch is nice and tight. And actually going to then come over here and pull this zipper piece into place. Okay. Tap, 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 tap. I don't like when it tangles on these ones because I feel like I'm so close to the end that I just want to make sure it all goes smoothly. There we go. So the one thing I will say when you get to this point, come over here and make sure your zipper pull is up there. You don't want to accidentally sew your zipper pull into place because then you won't be able to pull your zipper. You won't be able to pull it up, and that's a big problem. You do want it to go pretty high up because you also don't want any big gaps between the plastic and the zipper. Okay. So keep double checking to make sure your needle is going through both sides. Super important to catch more than just the zipper and also make sure that you're catching the plastic. My plastic comes in a little bit up here, so I think that my needle isn't making it through. Maybe it is. Yep, it is. Okay. It's just, at this point it gets really stiff because you've got two pieces of plastic that you're sewing into place and two zipper fabric pieces. So you really want to use that work surface to tap it down if you can. So this is going to be probably one of the more difficult parts of the project, this last like 1/4 inch. But just, you know, do your best. If this is your first time sewing this type of project, even if you end up with a little bit of a gap, you know, don't be too hard on yourself. It's a difficult thing to sew, and you're doing a really great job. The other thing we want to make sure is that we haven't accidentally stitched through any part of the zipper. So you might be able to see that your zipper has more than just a pull. It has these different like little loops and stuff, and we want to make sure we're not going through that. So I'm being very extra cautious right now because, like I said, I've done this once before and I made that mistake. Okay, I actually think this is pretty good. So what I'm gonna do is, remember how I did those extra stitches to secure? I'm actually gonna go ahead and do that here too. Put a couple of extra securing stitches just back and forth. Pretty carefully because I don't want, you know, don't want to end up going through my zipper on one of my securing stitches either. Okay, so I've decided that that is enough. I'm gonna go ahead and do my little knot. Put my finger there. Trying not to get there we go. There's a lot more on this end for things to get caught on, so. There we go. Do a couple of knots. And then we're gonna start sewing up the other side. The other side should be a little bit easier because it's got the doesn't have the zipper pull on it. So to do this, you know, it's very flexible plastic. It's gonna feel kind of weird probably at some point as you're turning it inside out. Just go ahead and pick a side and start. Don't pull it so hard that you like accidentally pull any stitches. It's also gonna look like kind of like crumpled up probably for a little bit, and that's okay. Just go ahead and work on pushing out one side and then just work on pushing out the next side. You're gonna also, and the bottom, you're gonna end up with these weird probably corners. What you can do is you can find something that's maybe like a chopstick or the flat end of a kitchen tool like a fork or spoon, and just stick that in there and then just like gently poke those out. I don't really have that. I do have these super fun scissors that fold so that they secure the sharp ends, and I'm just going to use that to kind of help me to push out each of my ends. Okay, if your zipper is a little like mine, it'll need to take some coaxing to get it out of there. Just keep working away at it. Just keep bending it. And just keep bending the flaps, and you'll eventually get it, and it will look like this. So now you can open and close your pouch. You can secure some things in there.